What is going on, everyone? Darkside Phil here, and Wakeful. Welcome to another edition of the Hateful Truth video game review series, which I like to go along with the slogan, maximum truth, minimum editing. And I don't think that rings more true than what the game we're going to talk about today. And you're going to understand what I mean in a second regarding maximum truth, okay? And there's an old saying, and the saying is quality over quantity. And in today's world, in today's reality, let's face it, the economy's bad in many of the countries all over the world. Lots of people don't have a lot of money, and so when it comes to choosing what games you're going to buy and enjoy, it usually comes down to a couple factors. Obviously, the quality of the game itself. Is it fun to play? Is it not frustrating? Is the story good? Are the graphics good? So on and so forth. The fun level of the game, meaning even though it might be great gameplay, are you going to enjoy playing it? Is it your cup of tea? And then, of course, there's the quantity of gameplay. How long is this game? Is there a lot of replayability? Are you getting a big bang for your buck if you were to purchase this game? The game we're going to talk about in today's Hateful Truth is a game that, unfortunately, at least from what I've been seeing in a lot of the mainstream media, and also just the comments on the videos of my playthrough of this game that I put out on YouTube, that it's getting a negative rep. And it's not because the gameplay is boring, it's not because it's repetitive, it's not because the story sucks, the graphics sucks, there's bugs, it's not fun, but simply based upon the fact that the game isn't very long. And we're going to talk a little bit about that over the course of the Hateful Truth review today. And I'm going to tell you my honest thoughts about this game, whether or not I think you should purchase it, what kind of person should play it. The game we're talking about today is The Darkness 2, okay? Darkness 2 is a direct sequel to The Darkness, a game that came out several years ago, an FPS game. But The Darkness 2 takes a little bit of a different turn. Original Darkness was more of like a stealth kind of gameplay. This is more about run and gun, using a lot of these cool abilities of the Darkness, which is a demon which possesses your body, to do really cool and unique things that really you don't see that often in first-person shooter games these days. So really it takes the genre and puts enough interesting twists and variety into it to kind of give it a refreshment. It really is a refreshing experience to play through The Darkness 2 and say, wow, it's not the old, the old same old FPS game for several different reasons. The story of The Darkness 2 follows Jackie Estacado, who was the protagonist from the first game and also is the protagonist of the very famous and popular line of Darkness comics that came out in the 1990s and some of the 2000s from Top Cow Productions. And the game, although it is The Darkness, does not, just so you know, follow along the actual plot line of the comics. It's supposed to be like its own splinter universe, its own splinter version of Jackie Estacado and what happens to him in the video games. It does have a lot of the plots and things and story elements of the original comics, but it doesn't follow it to a T. It's more of a reimagining, if anything else. And so, The Darkness 2 leaves off where The Darkness 1 ended, where Jackie Estacado is still in charge of this demonic presence known as The Darkness, but he has it under control. He hasn't let it out for a long time. He's now back to business as usual as the head of a mob, and he's just basically trying to live his life and suppress this darkness demon that's inside of him. Well, all of a sudden, a hit is made on him, his restaurant is destroyed, his loved ones start to get attacked, and at one point even, they attack his home, and he's just trying to figure out what the hell is going on. Why is everyone trying to attack me? Come to find out, it's all provocation to try to get him to use his darkness abilities because someone is trying to steal the darkness. It's this shady undercover group called the Brotherhood. Now, I could go into more detail than that, but I definitely do not want to spoil some of the very interesting and fun story elements and plot twists in The Darkness 2. And what I really want to say is for the fact that this game has a 6-hour-long single-player campaign, it's like reading a really amazing comic book or watching a series of long movies with a very gripping, interesting story. It's actually a mystery. There's a very big mystery in here where Jackie is kind of having mental splits and he's starting to see himself as visions inside of an insane asylum, and he's wondering if maybe that's the reality. Maybe he really is an insane patient and the darkness doesn't exist. Maybe he's really crazy, and then when he goes back to the world as being a gangster and using the darkness, that's really his crazy insanity, you know, playing tricks with his mind. So there's this whole dichotomy of gameplay between these crazy assassination mobster-style missions versus all of a sudden being pulled out and going to an insane asylum and wondering what the hell's going on. The story is excellent. It grips you, it tugs at you, it wants you to keep playing the game and not put it down until you finally figure out what the hell's going on. In the amazing final act, where there's actually more than one twist at the end of this game, you gotta definitely play it to the end and wait till after the credits, by the way, to see the true ending of the game, which in my opinion is some of the best writing in a game in quite a long time. That being said, I'm not really surprised considering it was made by Top Cow Games, and Mark Silvestri, who was the original creator of the Darkness character, is the CEO of Top Cow Comics, and he is a really good comic book writer. So I understand why the damn story is so good. But the story is not the only great thing about the Darkness 2. The graphics are done in a style to make it look, it's kind of cell shading, but not fully cell shading. Let me put it that way. It's kind of like, the graphics are detailed, but they are cell shaded at the same time, almost like putting a skin over it. And the reason they do that is to make it have more like a comic book feel. I think it works. Some people complain, oh, it's too cartoony, it should have been more realistic. I think if it was ultra realistic, it might have pulled itself away from the fact that it is a comic book and has comic book origins. I like what they did with that. It features a wide array of characters, and in fact, this is probably one of the few games I've ever played where the mobs, it actually makes the mob feel lovable. Like, you get to know all these different mobsters who you're working with, and some of them are your relatives, some of them are just, you know, very cherished accomplices or people who work for you in the mob, and you actually start to like these people and have an attachment to them. Any good story will do that. The graphics, I'm sorry, not the graphics, the gameplay, in my opinion, is where the Darkness 2 stands out from all other FPS games, I'd say probably for the past several years, okay? The gameplay of Darkness 2 is a very unique combination of elements from the FPS genre, okay? You're going to start out with your standard, okay, I've got a handgun, and you look down the sights and you shoot like every other FPS game. Then you start to dual wield, where you can pick up more than one weapon, and that's pretty cool. You can't, just like in Call of Duty when you dual wield, you can't look down the sights, but you can shoot two guns at once. But really where the element of variety comes in here is with your Darkness Demon and how it affects the gameplay of this game. And that being said, the game has an interesting skill tree which you can unlock new abilities for your Darkness Demon as the game progresses, the more enemies that you kill, and that allows you to completely change the way you play the game. I mean, you could play the game melee style, where you just use your Darkness Tentacles to whip people around and destroy their defenses and then execute them by shoving the head of one of your tentacles into them and then doing a unique execution kill. There's actually 4 different styles of execution in this game, each of which give you something unique. One of them will give you your health back, one of them will give you more ammo for your guns, one of them will actually give you a defensive shield so that you have more defense, and I believe the other one actually it powers up some of your other abilities that you already have, so like the cooldowns are reduced or something like that. Outside of just the Darkness abilities that are melee combat, there's also combat enhancements that do many different things. So for example, there's one that's called, I think it's called like gun, it's some special gun wielding technique, and I forget exactly what it was called in the game, but for a limited time, there's a little meter, when you activate it, your guns become super powerful and have unlimited ammo. So you just go to town clearing out a whole alleyway of bad guys that are coming at you until the meter expires. And there's other abilities like that as well. There's one called Swarm, where you actually send out a swarm of insects that distract your enemies and they can't move, so they're basically just sitting ducks for a limited time. And both those abilities have cooldown and have to recharge so that you can use them again. And the more that you play the game, the more abilities you'll unlock. There's ones that allow you to have better accuracy, quicker reload times, more damage, and such with your weapons. So really, depending on how you want to play the game, you can make it all about the guns. You can make it all about running gun like other FPS games. Or you can do what I did and do a little bit more of a hybrid, where I was doing a lot of melee style stuff, a lot of executions, and then in between, when I had to, like if I was too far away from an enemy, then I would try to use my guns. But it was more of a combination for me, and it really made the game put a lot of variety into the gameplay of the game and a lot of fun. So it was an experiment doing the game like this, and I think they hit it right on the head. This is excellent. For the 6 hours of gameplay that are in the Darkness 2, There was never a time when I was like, oh, I'm bored, or oh, this is feeling too repetitive. There were some times near the last couple chapters of the game where I said, all right, you know, this is getting a little bit drawn out with all these enemies, and then that chapter would end and the story would progress with perfect timing. So they really knew what they were doing to keep the story and to keep the gameplay moving and not have you get just stuck in the same repetitive thing with endless waves of enemies, which is what happens in a lot of games that are shooter style like this. A lot of people say games like Modern Warfare, Uncharted, they have this too many enemies syndrome. It's just wave after wave after wave after wave of repetitive enemies, and you're like, oh, enough, I like the game, but this is getting boring. I think The Darkness 2 paces the gameplay perfectly and doesn't really falter in this department, okay? In addition to just yourself, you also have a guy called a Darkling who is like your henchman. And in certain missions, he can be sent out to do different things. In some missions, you can actually have him assist in your combat by throwing him at your enemies, in which case he executes the enemy that he lands on. Or in some cases, you can actually control him. There are 2 mini-missions where you control the Darkling and become him, so that you can do unique sneaking, you can, you know, sneak around and try to very stealthily execute people. Another gameplay mechanic in The Darkness that is pretty unique is the light and darkness aspect, meaning you are a demon called the Darkness, so light actually hurts you. And so several times in the game you're going to find, maybe you're in an alley and there's a bright street light, your darkness powers will go away, and now all of a sudden you're vulnerable with no darkness to be able to let you heal or regenerate health, and all you have is just a normal guy with 2 guns trying to duke it out against all these enemies. So it's in your best interest to shoot down any of the lights that you see around you in this game. Now there are some unique times in the game when you cannot do this, and some of those examples would be there are enemies who throw flashbang grenades, and those will temporarily stun you and you have to run for cover. There will be enemies who have giant light bulb cannons that aim them at you and you have to try to shoot them out or kill that enemy before basically the other enemies that are with him get to you and are able to damage you. And there are some other unique times in the game too where light and darkness is used pretty ingeniously. I think it is an excellent mechanic to have in the game, and I think it is well executed. So, let's also talk a little bit about the locales. You're going to have some standard stuff, including you know, obviously some alleyways, city streets, sewers, and stuff like that. There's also going to be subway fights. There's going to be a fight in a restaurant, a fight in a mansion. There's actually a really cool part of the game where you're in an amusement park, and in particular the best part, what I feel is one of the best design levels I've ever played ever, and I'm not even joking, is you actually get into a house of horrors. And if you've ever been in one of these rides on an amusement park, it's exactly like that. You're in a house of horror ride with your girlfriend, but you also have guns and you have to kill enemies that are trying to attack you. So all of a sudden, a fake monster jumps out and you're like, ha ha ha, then all of a sudden the dude walks up from behind him and starts shooting you in the face. You're like, holy shit, pick up your gun and start shooting the guy. And it's really ingenious, it's funny, it's fun, it's done really well, and there's 1 or 2 really unique parts of the game. I don't want to spoil too much, that's why I'm not going to give away the other one that I want to talk about, but they're really unique levels that I really feel that I'm going to probably remember them for the rest of my life, because when else are you going to have a chance to be in a first-person shooter game and go into a house of horrors and have to fight guys off while you're experiencing the funniness and the scariness of the house of horrors as well. So really fun, really awesome, really neat, and I think they did a really great job. Okay, now all that being said, the campaign of The Darkness 2, the single-player campaign, is roughly 6 hours long, okay? The Darkness 2 also does have additional game modes, some of which I've had a chance to play. Some I didn't have the chance to do every mission, but what they basically are, it's called Vendetta, which is a side plot line to The Darkness 2 of events and missions that are happening alongside the actual single-player campaign as it's happening. It's like a spin-off. And you get to choose one of 4 unique characters, all of which actually have darkness powers, but aren't as powerful as Jackie. I mean, Jackie has everything. He has amazing melee powers. He's got the guns he can charge. He's got the swarm he can send out. What they do here is they create 4 unique characters who each have a unique personality, and they're actually pretty much all racial stereotypes. But they each get one piece of that. So one person will have a really powerful gun with the gun charging ability. One person will have the swarm ability. One person will have the ability to lift enemies. So each person gets a couple of the unique powers of the darkness, rather than having everyone have every power, which would probably be overpowered. Now you can choose to play the Vendetta mode either completely by yourself offline or online with people co-op over the internet, which is how I experienced it. And there is a campaign per se, which is a series of missions that last about maybe an hour and a half, and you'll get several achievements or trophies for completing them. And basically what it is a series of 5 to 10 minute side missions that you go out and you have a goal. So maybe it's go find out what this artifact is in this warehouse. You have to fight your way into the warehouse and get the artifact. And it has similar combat, I'd say, to a game similar to maybe like Dead Island or Left 4 Dead, where you're there with a group of 3 other people and it's your job to keep each other alive. And that's really the whole gist of it. You can revive each other and while fighting off these waves of enemies until you finally get to your objective. And there is a couple boss fights with other people who actually have darkness powers as well, which is pretty fun. It's really neat. Does it add anything super significant to the game? Not really, but it does add a couple hours of extra gameplay on. Outside of the online campaign, there are also individual hit list missions, which are just single one-off missions that you can play by yourself or online with other people as well. And they're not in a campaign per se, but they're just similar missions to the ones that were in the online campaign, which would probably, if you do them all, I think it's something like maybe 10 extra missions, will probably add another 2 to 3 hours of gameplay. So all in all, if you do everything in the Darkness 2 just once, you'll probably get about 10 hours of gameplay out of the game. Now keep in mind that the game has a 6-hour-long single-player campaign, but also has a New Game Plus mode. And what New Game Plus allows you to do is restart the game over at a new difficulty. So if you want to do it at the hardest difficulty to try to challenge yourself and to get that achievement or trophy for doing so, you can do that, and you retain all of the powers that you unlocked over the course of the first playthrough of the campaign. So really, in reality, there's no way in one playthrough to unlock all of the powers. Like me, I went for a more hybrid style with powered up guns, but I also had some melee abilities. Maybe if I played it again, now I could really level up my guns and become a sharpshooter rather than having to worry about always using the darkness powers, and I could play the game completely differently. So there is incentive to play the game a second time, and there's actually 2 different endings depending on a critical decision that you make at the end of the game that either extends the game by 1 extra level or actually ends the game a little bit prematurely. From what I've heard, if you end the game prematurely, it is a little bit of a letdown. The ending isn't as good as the true ending of the game, so you'll probably, if you get that ending, will want to play through the game again to get back to that level and be able to see what happens if you pick the other option. So that's something to just throw out there. So overall, the Darkness 2, in my opinion, and then we're going to talk a little bit about quality over quantity, okay? In my opinion, the Darkness 2 is one of the best FPS games I've ever played. And the reason I say that is it's not for one particular reason. I mean, the story, the pacing, the interesting characters, the graphics, the gameplay are all perfectly spaced out and paced to keep you riveted and hooked on this game as you play it. There's no time during the game when you say this is too hard. There's no time during the game when you say this is too boring or difficult or drawn out. Give me a break. It's perfectly paced. And yes, the single player campaign of the Darkness 2 is only 6 hours long. But let me say this. I really feel that if they had added anything else into the game, it would have felt more like padding than anything else. And in my opinion, 6 hours is the perfect length for this style of game, okay? I wouldn't want a 14-hour FPS game where it has the same shit over and over, and you have to constantly be doing this kind of stuff. Now sure, in other games like Halo, okay, we're going to put in a space level where you fly a jet. Okay, you can do that in Halo, but what would you do in the Darkness 2 to add in that kind of variety of gameplay? You probably couldn't. And thankfully, the Darkness 2 doesn't do that cliche where, wow, here's a level that's an on-rails level that has nothing to do with the rest of the gameplay of the rest of the game. Why did they have this in here? And usually it's thrown in there for variety and for padding. The Darkness 2 doesn't do that. It just takes 6 hours of really great gameplay, story, riveting, gripping, you know, quality of fun, and you want to keep playing it for those 6 hours. So, in my opinion, an excellent game, and I would say my first pick for probably what will be one of my favorite games of 2012 this year, and hopefully, I don't know, because there's going to be a ridiculous amount of releases this year, a lot of which are epic in scale, but hopefully this game might even make it into my top 10 games this year. Who knows? We'll have to see. Or it might get an honorable mention at the least, but we'll see what happens. But an excellent, excellent game. So now let's talk about quality over quantity, because as I was playing this game, especially when I beat it, on the last part of it, I saw comments, and this is on YouTube, and you know on YouTube you get the most ridiculous, unfiltered comments from every kind of person from the world, so you know some of them are ridiculous, but I saw a common vein. There were people literally saying, wow, this game is only 6 hours long? Well, it sucks monkey dicks. It's a skip for me. There's no way I'd play a game that's only 6 hours long. To which I'm thinking, I guess these people didn't play Portal 2. I guess these people didn't play Uncharted, because the Uncharted games are only maybe 6 to 8 hours long, usually, depending on, you know, how good you are at them. I guess you didn't play any of the games that really don't have that long of a campaign. Like, what kind of mentality is that? Just because a game is a certain number of hours long, you're going to completely skip it and write it off and call it shitty? Now, don't get me wrong. Like I said earlier in this review, I understand it's a bad economy. I understand that a lot of people, including younger people who maybe are in school, maybe are working a part-time job, if they even can find a part-time job, can't afford a lot of games. On the flip side, there's a lot of adults who are struggling right now, and they can't afford to really be buying luxury items like a video game. So a $60 investment could be a big one, especially if it means that's the only game you're going to be playing for the next month or two, because you can't afford another game for quite a while. So I can understand the argument, well, the game's only 6 hours long, okay, and I'll play it online for another 4 or 5 hours, so maybe it's 10 hours long total, or I could buy a game that has 20 hours of guaranteed gameplay, like a role-playing game, or like Modern Warfare, because I know that it has online play that I might play a lot online. So this is a instant skip for me, okay? What I want to say is you are missing out if that is your mentality, because there are a lot of games out there that know how to give you a bang for your buck because of the quality of what you're receiving. And The Darkness 2 is one of these situations, okay, where I understand it doesn't have a lot of gameplay, but for the amount of time that you're playing the game, you're going to enjoy every minute of it. It's going to have memorable moments you're going to remember in your gaming experiences for the rest of your life, and you're going to actually, I kind of cherish it, because I've been waiting for a good FPS game for quite some time. It's been a while since there's been one. So for me, this is a unique experience to get a game that's this good in a package that's 6 hours long, okay, but I feel that it was 6 hours well spent. Okay, 6 hours, I paid $60, $10 an hour, fuck yes, I'll pay $10 an hour to get this kind of quality out of a game. I fully understand there are people who are unable to do that. So if that is your case, I still urge you, rent The Darkness 2. And I know that takes money out of the pockets of the game developers, except for the first time when the game was purchased by the rental, like Netflix or whoever it is, Gamefly, who you're renting from. But you have to experience it. If you like first-person shooter games, if you like interesting stories, supernatural twists, a mystery, a long, winding mystery that's going to have you wondering at every twist and turn what's really going on here. Is Jackie insane? Is Jackie just being fooled? What's really the story here? Who is it that's trying to capture Jackie and do things to him? And I really feel that you should experience it and not skip out on it if that's the kind of stuff that you like. Obviously, if you're the kind of person you say, I only buy games that I can put 40 hours into. I'm buying Final Fantasy 13 too, and even though I don't even really like the story that much, I'm going to beat the single-player campaign, then I'm going to go do all the optional missions, and I'm going to spend countless hours grinding to get every ending out of the 9 possible endings, and it's $60, so my money's well spent. For me, personally, it's quality over quantity, okay? Now don't get me wrong, if there's another game that's giving me the quality that I'm experiencing of this game and is 10 hours long, then by all means go buy that game. But for what I've seen with FPS games, this is your best bet. In the past several years, this is the best FPS game to come out, and you should experience The Darkness 2 if you at all can, okay? So, overall, what do I think about it and how am I going to rate it? It's a great game. Interesting story, unique characters that you get to know and actually like and get attached to. And I know that's crazy to say that in a 6-hour story, but they actually do a good job of it. Interesting locales, amazing gameplay with variety of abilities, supernatural things, a story that grips you with twists and turns with a mystery element, an amazing ending that really needs to be experienced. what the fuck, this game is really freaking good. And then all the other missions, the hit list missions, the Vendetta campaign, and co-op online just adds to the quality of the package. Even though it is optional that you play that stuff, it's still pretty fun, and it's interesting that they added that in. Maybe like they said, okay, we understand our campaign's only 6 hours long, so people might complain, let's give them some more. And that's exactly what they do. So, for me, the only real complaint about The Darkness 2 is that it's only a 6 hour long experience, but as I've said, I know that if they tried to expand it any longer, it probably would have felt like it was padded or droning on. So for me, even though it is a factor into my review, it's also something that really doesn't necessarily hinder the game, that it only has a 6 hour long campaign. I know there will be people who will disagree with me. I know there are people that will flip out and say, oh, you don't know what a good game is because it needs to be 10 hours long or whatever your personal preference of length is. For me, The Darkness 2 should not be missed, and I recommend it to everyone who likes FPS games. I give The Darkness 2 an 8.5. That's right. And now on my grading scale of 1 to 10, that is an extremely high score. It's almost perfect, okay? But the fact that it is a little bit on the short side, the fact that the online play isn't as good as the main campaign, that's for sure, but it is interesting that it's there. I think that really it's close to being great. It is great, but it's close to being almost like one of my favorite games for a very long time. But it just falls a little bit short, just a little bit short, mostly because, like I said, again, 6 hour long campaign, okay, that has to be a factor, okay? So, The Darkness 2, it gets an 8.5 from me. I hope that everyone will give it a chance and experience it. If you can't buy it, rent it, play through it. It's definitely worth a playthrough or two to do the New Game Plus. I enjoyed it. Hopefully, it ends up being one of my best games of the year, and what a good way to start off the retail season, because it's only been 2 weeks of retail games coming out, and we've already got a really, really good title. So that's awesome. Okay, so that's it for the Hateful Truth video game review. Maximum truth, minimum editing. I hope you enjoyed it, and now you're a lot more informed on the game we talked about today. And I will see you guys later for more Hateful Truth video game reviews. Thanks.